When she walked into my room that rainy night, I thought she was part of my past, until I realized she was about to change my future forever. It was almost midnight when David heard his front door creak open. He looked up from his laptop screen, rubbing his tired eyes. For the past 3 hours, he had been working on a design project that was due the next morning. His small apartment was quiet, except for the sound of rain hitting his windows. David thought it was his roommate coming back from work. Mike always worked late shifts at the hospital and usually came home around this time. But something felt different tonight. The footsteps didn't go toward Mike's room. Instead, they were coming straight toward his bedroom. David saved his work and pushed his chair back from his desk. His heart started beating a little faster. Who could be walking toward his room at this hour? He lived on the 3rd floor of an old building, and the stairs outside were pretty noisy. He would have heard someone coming up if it wasn't Mike. The footsteps stopped right outside his door. David stared at the doorway, waiting. Then she appeared. It was Lisa, his girlfriend from 2 years ago. She stood there in his doorway like she belonged there, but David knew she didn't. Not anymore. They had broken up when she moved to another state for her new job. It wasn't a bad breakup, but it was final. They both knew it was over. But here she was, standing in his room like no time had passed at all. Lisa looked different somehow, more sure of herself. Her long brown hair was wet from the rain, and she wore a dark coat that came down to her knees. But it was her eyes that caught David's attention. There was something in them he had never seen before. A kind of strength, maybe even desperation. David just stared at her for a moment. His mind was racing with questions. How did she get in? Why was she here? Did something happen to her? Was she in trouble? Lisa, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? How did you even get in? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a step into his room and closed the door behind her. The sound of the door clicking shut seemed louder than it should have been. I used the spare key, she said simply. Her voice sounded calm, but David could hear something underneath it. Fear, maybe, or sadness. David had completely forgotten about that key. 2 years ago, when they were together, he had given her a spare key to his apartment. After they broke up, he never asked for it back. He figured she had thrown it away or forgotten about it. Clearly, he was wrong. Lisa, what's going on? David asked, standing up from his chair. Are you okay? Did something happen? She looked at him for a long moment, and David could see her trying to decide what to say. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she kept them pressed against her coat. I need to tell you something, she said. But first, I need you to know that I didn't come here to cause problems for you. I know you've probably moved on. I know this is weird and unexpected. David's heart was pounding now. In all the time they had dated, Lisa had never been the type to show up unannounced. She was always careful, always planned everything. Seeing her like this, wet from the rain and standing in his room without warning, scared him. Just tell me, what's wrong? David said, taking a step toward her. Whatever it is, just tell me. Lisa took a deep breath and started unbuttoning her coat. David watched, confused, as she let it fall to the floor. Underneath, she wasn't wearing what he expected. Instead of regular clothes, she had on what looked like hospital clothes. I'm having surgery tomorrow morning, she said, her voice breaking slightly. It's serious, and I'm scared. David felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. Surgery? Lisa was only 26 years old. What kind of surgery could she need? What kind of surgery? He asked, moving closer to her. They found something in my chest, she said, wrapping her arms around herself. The doctors say it's probably nothing serious, but they need to remove it to be sure. I flew back here because the best doctor for this kind of thing works at the hospital downtown. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Lisa had come all the way back to their city alone to have surgery. And instead of calling him or texting him, she had used their old key to come to his apartment in the middle of the night. Why didn't you call me? David asked. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? Lisa looked down at the floor. Because I didn't want to bother you. I know we're not together anymore. I know you have your own life now. But I couldn't face tomorrow alone, and this place." She looked around his small room. This place always felt safe to me. David felt his chest tighten. Even though 2 years had passed since they broke up, hearing Lisa say she felt safe with him brought back so many memories. Good memories of late nights talking, of her falling asleep next to him while he worked, of quiet mornings when everything felt perfect. But things were different now. He was different. She was different. And he had started seeing someone new, even though it wasn't serious yet. "Lisa," he said softly, "you could have called me. Surgery or no surgery, you could have called me." She looked up at him and David could see tears in her eyes. "I was afraid you would say no. I was afraid you would tell me to stay in a hotel or find somewhere else to go. I just needed one night where I felt completely safe before facing tomorrow." David stood there, not knowing what to say. Part of him wanted to be angry. She couldn't just show up like this and expect everything to be okay. But another part of him, a bigger part, just wanted to help her. The thought of Lisa facing surgery, alone, scared, and far from her family made his heart hurt. "Can I stay?" she asked, her voice so quiet David almost didn't hear her. "Just for tonight. I promise I'll leave in the morning before you wake up. You won't even know I was here." David looked at Lisa standing there in his room, scared and vulnerable, asking for help. 2 years ago, he would have done anything for her. Even now, after all this time, he couldn't say no. "Of course you can stay," he said. "But Lisa, we need to talk about this. You can't just show up like this without explaining everything." She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know, and I will. I'll explain everything. But right now I just need to feel safe for a few hours before tomorrow." David watched as Lisa walked over to his bed and sat down on the edge of it. She looked so small and scared, nothing like the confident woman who had walked into his room just minutes earlier. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight he would make sure she felt safe. David closed his laptop and moved it to his desk. The room felt different now with Lisa sitting on his bed. The rain outside was getting heavier, and the sound filled the quiet spaces between their words. "Tell me about the surgery," David said, pulling his desk chair closer to the bed. "What exactly did the doctors find?" Lisa took a deep breath and looked down at her hands. "About 3 months ago, I started feeling this weird pressure in my chest. At first, I thought it was just stress from my new job. You know how I always worry about everything." David did know. Lisa had always been someone who carried stress in her body. When they were together, she would get headaches when work got busy, or her shoulders would hurt when she was worried about something. But the pressure got worse, Lisa continued. "It started hurting when I tried to sleep, so I went to see a doctor and they did some tests. They found this growth in my chest cavity, right near my heart." David felt his stomach drop. Near her heart. That sounded serious, no matter what the doctor said. "The doctor here is supposed to be the best," Lisa said. "He's done this surgery hundreds of times. They're pretty sure it's nothing dangerous, but they need to remove it to be completely sure." "When did you find out you needed surgery?" David asked. 2 weeks ago. I booked the flight and the appointment, but I didn't tell anyone I was coming back here. My family thinks I'm having the surgery done in my new city." David was confused. "Why didn't you tell them? And why didn't you tell me until now?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. She got up from the bed and walked over to his window, looking out at the rain. "Because I was scared they would all worry too much. My mom would have wanted to fly out and stay with me. My sister would have taken time off work. And you." She turned to look at him. "I didn't know if you would even want to hear from me." "Lisa, of course I would want to hear from you if you were sick. We might not be together anymore, but that doesn't mean I stopped caring about you." She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I know that now, but 2 weeks ago when I was sitting in that doctor's office alone, hearing about surgery and risks and recovery time, all I could think about was how much I missed having someone who really knew me." David understood what she meant. When they were together, they had been each other's person. The one you called with good news or bad news? The one who knew exactly what to say when you were scared? So you decided to come back here without telling anyone? David asked. I told myself I was just coming back for the better doctor, and that's mostly true. But if I'm being honest, I also came back because I needed to see you. I needed to spend one night feeling like I belonged somewhere before facing tomorrow. Lisa sat back down on the bed, this time closer to where David was sitting. Can I tell you something else? Something I never told you when we were together? David nodded. I was scared of us, Lisa said. When I got that job offer 2 years ago, part of me was relieved. We were getting so serious so fast, and it scared me. I had never felt that way about anyone before. This was news to David. During their relationship, Lisa had seemed so sure about everything. She was the one who said, I love you first. She was the one who started talking about moving in together. You were scared of us? David asked. But you always seemed so sure about our relationship. I was sure about how I felt about you, Lisa said. But I wasn't sure I was ready for what that meant. The job offer gave me an excuse to run away before things got too real. David sat back in his chair, 2 years later, and he was still learning new things about their relationship. I wish you had told me that then. Maybe we could have figured it out. Maybe, Lisa said. But I think I needed these 2 years to grow up, to figure out who I am when I'm not scared of my own feelings. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, listening to the rain. David was processing everything Lisa had told him. The surgery, her fear, her confession about why she really left. What about you? Lisa asked. What's your life like now? Are you seeing anyone? David felt his chest tighten. He was seeing someone. But it was still very new. They had only been on 3 dates, and it wasn't serious yet. But still, having this conversation with Lisa while thinking about someone else felt complicated. I've been on a few dates with someone, David said honestly. It's nothing serious yet, but she's nice. Lisa nodded, and David could see her trying, not to show any reaction. That's good. You deserve to be happy. Lisa, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. She looked at him, waiting. Did you come here hoping we might get back together? Is that part of why you're here? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. David could see her thinking carefully about her answer. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe part of me hoped that. But mostly, I think I just needed to see you. I needed to know that the person who made me feel safest in the world was still that same person. David felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for what they had lost, confusion about what this night meant, and worry about Lisa's surgery tomorrow. I'm glad you came, David said. I'm glad you felt like you could come here when you were scared. Even though it's complicated? Lisa asked. Even though it's complicated, David confirmed. But Lisa, tomorrow after your surgery we're going. To have to figure out what this means for both of us, Lisa nodded. I know, but can we just worry about that tomorrow? Tonight? Can we just be David and Lisa, sitting in your room on a rainy night talking like we used to? David looked at her sitting there, vulnerable and scared, but also somehow stronger than he remembered. Yeah, he said. We can do that. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and inside David's small room, 2 people who used to love each other sat talking through the night, both knowing that tomorrow would change everything again. As the night went on, David and Lisa fell into the comfortable rhythm they used to have. They talked about everything and nothing, the way people do when they have history together. Lisa told him about her new city, about her job at a marketing company, about the small apartment she rented near downtown. She described her co-workers, her new routines, the coffee shop she had started going to every morning. It's a good life, she said. But it's lonely sometimes. I haven't made the kind of friends you can call at midnight when you're scared. David understood what she meant. He had his roommate Mike and a few friends from work, but no one he felt completely comfortable being vulnerable with. That had been something special about his relationship with Lisa. They had been each other's safe space. What about you? Lisa asked. Tell me about this girl you've been seeing. David hesitated. Talking about his new relationship with Lisa felt strange, but she had been honest with him, so he owed her the same honesty. Her name is Rachel, David said. She works at the bookstore downtown. We met when I was buying a book for my mom's birthday. She recommended this mystery novel, and we started talking about books we liked. Lisa smiled. That sounds like you. You always did fall for people in bookstores and coffee shops. We've only been on 3 dates, David continued. She's smart and funny and she makes me laugh, but we're still getting to know each other. It's not... He paused, trying to find the right words. It's not like what we had? Lisa asked gently. No, it's not like what we had. But maybe that's... Okay, maybe not every relationship has to be that intense. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that too. In my new city, I went on some dates, but I kept comparing everyone to you. To us. I think that's part of why nothing worked out. They were sitting on his bed now, both of them leaning against the wall. David had given Lisa one of his old t-shirts to change into, and she looked more like the Lisa he remembered. Comfortable and relaxed, even though he knew she was still scared about tomorrow. Can I ask you something? Lisa said. Of course. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't taken that job? If I had stayed here and we had kept dating? David had wondered about this many times over the past 2 years, especially during the first few months after she left, when he kept expecting her to call or text, kept hoping she might change her mind and come back. Yeah, I think about it sometimes, David said. I used to think about it a lot, actually. I used to imagine you calling me and saying you were coming home. And now? David thought carefully about his answer. Now I think maybe everything happened the way it was supposed to. You needed to go figure out who you were on your own. And I needed to learn how to be okay without you. Are you? Okay without me? David looked at her, sitting there in his old t-shirt, her hair still slightly damp from the rain. 2 years ago, if someone had asked him if he could be okay without Lisa, he would have said no. She had been such a big part of his life, such a big part of how he saw his future. Most days? Yeah, he said honestly. Some days are harder than others. But I built a good life for myself. I have my work, my friends, my routine. I'm happy most of the time. Lisa was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you for that. When I left, I worried that I had hurt you too much. I worried that you would hate me. I never hated you, David said. I was angry for a while, and sad for a longer while, but I never hated you. You were following your dreams. How could I hate you for that? Even though I didn't handle it very well. Even though I basically ran away without really talking through what it meant. Even though that, David confirmed. We were young, Lisa. We were both figuring things out. Lisa shifted on the bed so she was facing him. What if I told you that? Being away for 2 years made me realize that what we had was special? What if I told you that I've never felt as safe or as understood with anyone else? David felt his heart speed up. This was the conversation he had both hoped for and dreaded having. I would say that what we had was special, David said carefully, but I would also say that we're both different people now than we were 2 years ago. Different how? You're braver now. You moved to a new city, started a new job, built a whole new life for yourself. 2 years ago, you were scared of how serious we were getting. Tonight, you showed up at my door and told me exactly what you needed. Lisa smiled. And you're different too. 2 years ago, if I had shown up like this, you would have spent the whole night trying to fix everything for me. Tonight, you're listening and being supportive, but you're not trying to solve all my problems. David realized she was right. 2 years ago, he probably would have insisted on going to the hospital with her, on calling her family, on taking control of the situation. Tonight, he was letting her handle things her way while still being there for support. So what does that mean? Lisa asked. That we're different people now? I think it means we're better people now, David said. More grown up, more sure of ourselves. But does it mean we could try again? If the surgery goes well tomorrow, if I decide to move back here, could we see what happens? David looked at her, and for a moment, he could see their old relationship, clearly. The late-night conversations, the easy comfort they had with each other, the way they understood each other without having to explain everything. But he could also see the complications. Rachel, who was sweet and uncomplicated and didn't carry any baggage from his past. His life now, which was stable and predictable, and his own. The risk of going backward instead of forward. "I don't know," David said honestly. 6 hours ago I thought you were part of my past. Now you're here, and I'm remembering everything I loved about being with you. But I'm also thinking about everything I've built for myself since you left." Lisa nodded. "I understand, and I don't expect you to have an answer tonight. I just needed you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake I've ever made, even if it was something I needed to do at the time." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the rain was starting to slow down, but it was still steady against the windows. "Will you stay with me until I fall asleep?" Lisa asked. "Like you used to?" David remembered those nights from their relationship. Lisa had always had trouble falling asleep when she was worried about something. He used to lie next to her, running his fingers through her hair or rubbing her back until she drifted off. "Yeah," David said. "I can do that." Lisa curled up under his blankets, and David lay down next to her, staying on top of the covers. It felt familiar and strange at the same time. Familiar because they had done this hundreds of times before. Strange because 2 years had passed and they were different people now. "David," Lisa said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for not being angry with me for showing up like this. Thank you for trusting me enough to come here when you were scared." As Lisa's breathing slowly became deeper and more regular, David stared at the ceiling and wondered what tomorrow would bring. In a few hours, Lisa would have surgery, and he would have to decide what role he wanted to play in her life going forward. David woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. The room was filled with morning light, and for a moment he forgot where he was. Then he felt the warmth next to him and remembered everything. Lisa was still sleeping peacefully, curled up under his blankets. He carefully reached for his phone, trying not to wake her. It was a text from Rachel. "Good morning. I'm bringing breakfast over in an hour. Hope you don't mind the surprise." David's heart sank. He had completely forgotten that Rachel had mentioned wanting to cook for him. They had talked about it during their last date, but David thought she meant sometime next weekend, not this morning. He looked at Lisa sleeping next to him, then back at his phone. The text had been sent 20 minutes ago, which meant Rachel would be here in about 40 minutes. David felt panic rising in his chest. How was he going to explain this? He quietly got up and went to his kitchen to make coffee, hoping the familiar routine would help him think clearly. But his mind kept racing. Rachel was coming over expecting a quiet morning with him, and instead she was going to find his ex-girlfriend in his bed. David knew how it would look. No matter how innocent the night had been, no matter what the real reason was for Lisa being there, it would look exactly like what it wasn't. It would look like he had been unfaithful, like he had been lying to Rachel about his feelings. He was pouring his second cup of coffee when he heard Lisa stirring in the bedroom. A few minutes later, she appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing his t-shirt and looking sleepy but rested. "Morning," she said softly. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," David said, handing her a cup of coffee. "How are you feeling? Ready for today?" Lisa took the coffee gratefully and sat down at his small kitchen table. "As ready as I can be, I guess. The surgery is at noon, so I need to be at the hospital by 10. David looked at the clock on his stove. It was 8:30. In 30 minutes, Rachel would be here with groceries and breakfast plans. In an hour and a half, Lisa needed to leave for the hospital. "Lisa," David said, sitting down across from her. "I need to tell you something. Rachel is coming over this morning. She's bringing breakfast. She'll be here in about 30 minutes. The color drained from Lisa's face. "Oh no. David, I'm so sorry. I should have left earlier. I should have thought about this." "It's not your fault," David said quickly. "I forgot she was coming. We talked about it last week, but I thought she meant next weekend." Lisa stood up immediately. "I'll get dressed and leave right now. I can wait at a coffee shop until it's time to go to the hospital. Lisa, no, you shouldn't have to sit alone at a coffee shop when you're about to have surgery. And besides, she's already on her way. She'll probably see you leaving. They both sat there for a moment, realizing there was no good way out of this situation. Lisa was going to meet Rachel, and Rachel was going to find Lisa in David's apartment, wearing his clothes. What are you going to tell her? Lisa asked. The truth, David said. That you needed a place to stay because you're having surgery today, and that nothing happened between us. Will she believe you? David thought about Rachel. She was generally a trusting person, but she was also human. Finding your new boyfriend's ex-girlfriend in his apartment would be hard for anyone to understand, no matter how innocent the explanation. I don't know, David said honestly. But I have to try. 20 minutes later, they heard footsteps on the stairs outside David's apartment. Lisa had gotten dressed and was sitting on David's couch looking nervous. David was cleaning up the coffee cups, trying to make the apartment look as normal as possible. The knock on the door came exactly when David expected it. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Rachel stood there with 2 grocery bags and a bright smile. She was wearing a sundress and had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked young and happy, and completely unprepared for what she was about to walk into. Good morning, she said, leaning up to kiss David's cheek. I bought everything to make pancakes and scrambled eggs. I thought we could have a lazy Sunday morning together. Rachel, David started, but she was already walking, past him into the apartment. She stopped when she saw Lisa sitting on the couch. The smile faded from Rachel's face, and David watched her take in the scene. Lisa in David's living room, clearly having spent the night. David looking guilty and uncomfortable. Oh, Rachel said quietly. I didn't realize you had company. David closed the door and turned to face both women. Rachel, this is Lisa. Lisa, this is Rachel. Lisa stood up from the couch. Hi, Rachel. I'm really sorry about this. I know how this must look. Rachel set the grocery bags down on David's kitchen counter and looked back and forth between David and Lisa. How what must look? She asked, but David could hear the hurt in her voice. Rachel, David said, I can explain everything. Lisa is my ex-girlfriend, but she's here because she's having surgery today and she didn't have anywhere else to stay. Surgery? Rachel asked, looking at Lisa. Lisa nodded. I have a medical procedure this morning. I flew back here because the best doctor for this kind of surgery works at the downtown hospital. David was just helping me out as a friend. David could see Rachel trying to process this information. She was looking around the apartment, probably noticing that Lisa's clothes were folded on the chair, that there were 2 coffee cups in the sink. So you spent the night here? Rachel asked Lisa. Yes, Lisa said simply. But nothing happened between us. David was just being kind to someone who was scared and alone. Rachel turned to David. And you didn't think to mention that your ex-girlfriend was coming to town? You didn't think to tell me she was staying here? David felt awful. Rachel was right. He should have called her as soon as Lisa showed up. He should have explained the situation immediately, instead of letting her walk into it unprepared. You're right, David said. I should have called you last night. I should have told you what was happening. But it all happened so suddenly, and I was focused on helping Lisa through a difficult time. A difficult time that required her to sleep. In your bed? Rachel asked, and now David could hear anger creeping into her voice. She slept in my bed, but I stayed on top of the covers, David said. We just talked all night, nothing physical happened. Rachel looked at both of them for a long moment. David could see her trying to decide whether to believe them or not. Look, Rachel said finally. Maybe you're telling the truth. Maybe this is all completely innocent. But David, we've only been dating for 3 weeks. I barely know you. And now I find your ex-girlfriend in your apartment wearing your clothes after spending the night in your bed. How am I supposed to feel about that? David understood her point completely. If the situation were reversed, if he had gone to Rachel's apartment and found her ex-boyfriend there, he would probably feel the same way. I understand why you're upset, David said. But Rachel, I promise you, nothing happened between Lisa and me. Maybe not physically, Rachel said. But David, you chose to spend the night with your ex-girlfriend instead of calling me and explaining the situation. You chose to comfort her and be there for her. What does that say about where your heart really is? David felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Rachel was right. When Lisa had needed someone, he had been the one she came to. And when she had asked him to stay with her through the night, he had said yes without really thinking about what that meant for his new relationship. Rachel, Lisa said, speaking up for the first time in several minutes. This is my fault. I'm the one who showed up here without warning. I'm the one who put David in this position. If you're angry with anyone, be angry with me. Rachel looked at Lisa, and David could see her trying to decide how to respond. I'm not angry with you, Rachel said finally. You were scared and you reached out to someone you trusted, I understand that. But I am confused about why David was the person you trusted most in the world. The room went quiet. David realized that Rachel had just asked the question that got to the heart of everything. Why had Lisa come to him instead of her family or her new friends or anyone else in her life? Because he's the only person who ever made me feel completely safe, Lisa said quietly. And when I was facing the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, I needed that feeling one more time. Rachel nodded slowly, and David could see tears forming in her eyes. I think I understand, she said. But David, I think you need to figure out what you want. Because it seems like maybe your heart isn't as available as I thought it was. Rachel picked up her purse and walked toward the door. I hope your surgery goes well, Lisa. I really do. Rachel, wait, David said, following her to the door. Can we talk about this later, after Lisa's surgery? Rachel turned back to him. I don't think so, David. I think you have some things to figure out first, and I think I need some time to decide if this is something I want to be part of. She opened the door and left, closing it quietly behind her. David stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door before turning back to Lisa. David stood there looking at the closed door for a moment before turning back to Lisa. She was sitting on the couch again, her head in her hands. I'm so sorry, Lisa said without looking up. I've ruined everything for you, haven't I? David sat down next to her on the couch. He felt confused and sad and worried all at the same time. You didn't ruin anything, Lisa. I made my own choices last night. But you chose to help me instead of protecting your relationship with Rachel. That wasn't fair to either of you. David thought about what Rachel had said, about his heart not being as available as she thought it was. Maybe she was right. Maybe part of him had never completely gotten over Lisa. We need to get you to the hospital, David said, looking at the clock. It was 9:30, and Lisa needed to be there by 10. You don't have to come with me, Lisa said. You've done enough already, I can take a taxi. Lisa, I'm not letting you go to surgery alone. Rachel or no Rachel, I'm going to be there for you today. Lisa looked at him with tears in her eyes. Are you sure? You might still be able to fix things with her if you call her now and explain everything. David had thought about that. He could call Rachel, apologize for not handling things better, promise that nothing like this would ever happen again. Maybe she would understand. Maybe they could move forward. But as he looked at Lisa sitting there, scared and alone and about to face surgery, David realized something important. Rachel had been right when she asked where his heart really was. Because right now, in this moment, his heart was with the person who needed him most. I'm sure, David said. Let's go. The drive to the hospital was quiet. Lisa stared out the window while David focused on the traffic. Both of them were thinking about what the next few hours would bring. At the hospital, David waited while Lisa checked in and filled out paperwork. The waiting room was full of other families and friends, all waiting for their own loved ones to come through surgery safely. David Kim? A nurse called out around 11:30. David stood up, confused. Yes? Are you here with Lisa Chen? Yes, I am. She asked me to give you this, the nurse said, handing him a folded piece of paper. David opened the note. In Lisa's handwriting, it said, Thank you for being exactly who I needed you to be last night. No matter what happens today, I want you to know that coming to you was the right choice. You are still the kindest person I know. Don't let what happened this morning make you doubt that. I love you always. Lisa. David folded the note and put it in his pocket. He sat back down and waited. The surgery took 4 hours. David tried to read a magazine, tried to check his work emails, tried to do anything to keep his mind busy. But mostly he just watched the clock and worried. Finally, around 3 o'clock, a doctor in scrubs came out to the waiting room. "Are you here for Lisa Chen?" he asked David. "Yes, how did it go?" "The surgery went very well," the doctor said with a smile. "We were able to remove the growth completely, and the good news is that it was exactly what we hoped it would be. Nothing dangerous, just some tissue that needed to come out. She's going to be perfectly fine." David felt relief wash over him like a wave. Lisa was okay. She was going to be fine. "Can I see her?" David asked. "She's still waking up from the anesthesia, but you can sit with her if you'd like. She should be fully awake in about an hour." David followed the doctor to Lisa's room. She was lying in the hospital bed, still looking sleepy from the medication, but she was awake. "Hey," she said softly when she saw him. "Hey yourself," David said, pulling a chair up next to her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, but good. The doctor said everything went perfectly." "I know. I'm so relieved, Lisa. I was worried about you." Lisa smiled. "You were worried about me. After everything that happened this morning, you still stayed and worried about me." David took her hand. "Of course I did. That's what friends do for each other." "Is that what we are now? Friends?" David had been thinking about this question all day. Were they friends? Were they more than friends? Were they something else entirely? "I think we're people who care about each other," David said finally. "I think we're people who have a lot of history together, and who will always be important to each other even if we can't be together the way we used to be." Lisa nodded. "I can live with that." They sat quietly for a few minutes, just holding hands and being grateful that the surgery was over and that Lisa was okay. "What are you going to do now?" David asked. "Are you going back to your new city?" "Actually," Lisa said, "I've been thinking about that. My job there is fine, but it's not my dream job. And I don't have any real friends there. I've been thinking about maybe moving back here." David felt his heart skip a beat. "Really? Really? But not because of you," Lisa said quickly. "Well, not only because of you. I realized this week that I've been running away from things instead of toward things. I moved away from here because I was scared of us getting too serious. I stayed in my new city because I was scared of admitting I made a mistake. I think it's time I stopped running away from things." "So you'd move back here and we'd just be friends?" David asked. Lisa squeezed his hand. "We'd figure it out as we go. But David, I don't want you to break up with Rachel because of me. What happened this morning wasn't fair to her." David had been thinking about Rachel all day too. "I think Rachel and I were probably too new to survive something like this anyway. We barely knew each other. Maybe that's okay. Or maybe you should call her and try to explain things better. Maybe she deserves a real conversation about what happened." David realized Lisa was right. Rachel did deserve a real conversation. She deserved to understand the whole situation and make her own decision about whether she wanted to try to work through it. "I'll call her tonight," David said. "But Lisa, whether things work out with Rachel or not, I want you to know that I'm glad you came to me when you were scared. I'm glad you felt safe enough to show up at my door. Even though it complicated everything. Even though it complicated everything." A few weeks later, David was sitting in the same coffee shop where he first met Rachel. She had agreed to meet him to talk, and David was nervous about what she might say. Rachel arrived exactly on time, looking as pretty as ever in a blue dress David had never seen before. "Hi," she said, sitting down across from him. "Hi, thanks for agreeing to meet me." "How is Lisa doing?" Rachel asked. "Did her surgery go well?" "It went perfectly. She's doing great. She's actually thinking about moving back to the city." Rachel nodded. "That's good. I'm glad she's okay. They sat quietly for a moment, both of them unsure how to start the conversation they needed to have. Rachel, David said finally, I owe you an apology. I should have called you the night Lisa showed up. I should have explained the situation instead of letting you walk into it unprepared. You're right, Rachel said. You should have. But David, I've been thinking about this for the past few weeks, and I realized that the real problem wasn't that you didn't call me. The real problem was that when your ex-girlfriend needed someone, you were still the person she turned to. And when she needed comfort, you were still the person who could give it to her. David knew Rachel was right. I guess I never completely got over her. And that's okay, Rachel said, surprising him. But it means you're not really available to build something new with someone else, at least not yet. David felt sad, but also relieved. Rachel was being so understanding about everything, even though she had every right to be angry. Do you think maybe someday, when I've figured out my feelings about Lisa, we could try again? David asked. Rachel smiled, but it was a sad smile. I don't know, David. Maybe. But I think you need to figure out what you want with Lisa first. You can't keep one foot in the past and one foot in the future forever. They talked for another hour, and when they left, David felt like they had both gotten closure. Rachel deserved someone who could love her completely, without any confusion about the past, and David needed to figure out what he really wanted. 6 months later, David was having dinner with Lisa at their favorite restaurant from when they used to date. Lisa had moved back to the city and gotten a job at a design firm downtown. They had been spending time together as friends, getting to know each other again as the people they had become. I got some news today, Lisa said as they were sharing dessert. Good news or bad news? Good news. Remember Dr. Rodriguez, the surgeon who did my operation? He offered me a job coordinating patient care for people having the same surgery I had. He said I'd be perfect for it because I understand what patients are going through. David smiled. Lisa, that's amazing. Are you going to take it? I think so. It feels like the right kind of work for me, helping people who are scared the way you helped me. David reached across the table and took her hand. I'm proud of you. For moving back here, for finding work you care about, for being brave enough to start over. I'm proud of us too, Lisa said, for figuring out how to be in each other's lives in a way that works. David knew what she meant. Over the past 6 months, they had slowly rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of friendship and honesty. They had talked through their past, figured out what went wrong, and learned to appreciate what was good about being in each other's lives without rushing into anything romantic. So what happens now? David asked. Lisa smiled. Now we keep figuring it out, one day at a time.